Andrew Bogut was the first pick in the NBA draft back in 2005. He won a championship in 2015 with the Golden State Warriors. He's just signed with the Dallas Mavericks, and he doesn't like social justice warriors very much. Andrew, welcome to the Rubin Report.
What's going on?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Yeah, going all right. Finally moved into the house, so getting settled here in Dallas.
Yeah, I want to get into a little of your Dallas move, but before we get into Dallas, let's just finish up with Golden State. Are you still in pain? I mean, losing Game 7, 3-1 lead. How you feeling?
It happens. That's sport, you know. We won it the year before, and last season with Golden State was my last season in Golden State too. We obviously were in the box seat and didn't finish it off, and that's kind of the spectacle of sport. But I'm obviously with a new club now and a new team, and looking to kind of achieve different goals.
Yeah, so you are with the Dallas Mavericks, and when I saw you sign with them, the idea of you being on the team owned by Mark Cuban makes a lot of sense to me, because these are two people who pretty much have no filter. Is he like your dream owner?
Yeah, we definitely don't have a filter. I mean, Mark's toning it down a little bit now. I wouldn't be surprised if he runs in 2020 or 2024. But
nice, you heard it here first. I like it.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, they really treat you well here. The Mavs are a world-class organization. Everyone knows and hears those stories of how well they treat their players, and they invest a lot into trying to help you be a better player. So you always respect an organization like that and an ownership group like that.
Yeah. Is there any risk, like when you're thinking about where to play, that when you hear, even though you hear that Mark Cuban treats the guys well and, you know, everything's first class and all that stuff, just having an outspoken owner, that is there any risk when you make your decisions?
Well, yeah, it wasn't really my decision. I got bounced here in a trade first and foremost, but I've definitely enjoyed it so far here. I think, you know, Mark obviously is very, very passionate. I'd rather have a passionate owner any day of the week than someone who's just using it as as an investment or for, a talking point for their friends. He wants to win as much as we do, and that's a great thing about having him involved. I mean, some people don't like that because they think that he's in the spotlight more than he should be, but he's around almost every other day. He sits courtside, he's in our huddles, and he really wants it to be a winning organization year in, year out, and I think he's done a great job up until this point.
Yeah, so I know that the stuff that you really want to talk about and what we first connected with over Twitter is the social justice warrior stuff. But before we get to that, you are Australian, in case they can't tell by your accent, those who don't know you.
Correct.
I had Rita Panahi on, who's an Australian columnist, a couple weeks ago.
Awesome.
And I think she's just great. I mentioned to her that my neighbors on both sides are Australians. I'm surrounded by a lot of Aussies. What do people not know about Australia that they should know? Because I feel like we just don't talk about Australia in America ever, besides, Crocodile Dundee.
Well, exactly right. We have buildings, we have televisions, we have
You have all that stuff?
We have all that stuff, believe it or not. It's not just kangaroos running out on red dirt. So I hear a lot of cultural appropriation when it comes to Australia. So it gets pretty interesting, but it's similar to America in a lot of ways. It's very built up city-wise. We have 5 or 6 major cities in each state. Predominantly, most people live close to the coastline or within a couple of hours drive of it. So Central Australia is very underpopulated because it's very, very hot there and there's not a whole lot to do there. So no real big cities in there, but very similar to America with everyday life. You work at 9 till 5, you have your weekends off to spend with your family. Elementary school, or we call it primary school, and secondary school, high school are kind of the same kind of system. So it's very similar, probably just a bit more kind of relaxed and chill than the States is.
Yeah, more surfing over there, I think.
Yeah, much more outdoor stuff, yep.
Yeah, Rita described Australia. She said she actually thinks it's the most tolerant nation on earth. As someone that's lived there and lived in America, which I know we got our problems and we're going to get into some of those problems, but do you sense one is more tolerant than the other?
Well, Australia is very tolerant. I think I mentioned this on a couple of different interviews that I've done, and my high school alone had almost 100 different nationalities, just my high school.
Wow.
I grew up in an area that was very multicultural. Melbourne itself is a huge multicultural city. And it's great. You get to experience different cultures, different religions, different stigmas from different countries, different foods, different types of music, and I really enjoyed it. And for the most part, people get along. But obviously, every now and then when there's politics overseas and wars overseas, every now and then you might have little run-ins in the high school yard with that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's very, very chilled and amicable.
Yeah. Were you always big? I assume you were probably pretty big back in high school, right?
Yeah, I was up and down. I was big early on, and then at the start of high school, I was kind of smaller, and then shot back up. So, but for the most part, I was pretty big. So the older kids usually got stuck into me a fair bit, thinking that I was older than I was.
So that probably worked against you for the older kids, but then you probably got to bully some kids that were smaller than you. I know probably not supposed to say that, but you probably had some fun, right?
Yeah, kids are kids, man. You know, there was a lot of scuffles in the schoolyard, and we all lived and grew up from it. So, I'm still living and living an okay life, as I'm sure most other people are. But I've been on, both ends of that.
Yeah, and for me too, I was completely on both ends of bullying. I was bullied by the kids that were either bigger than me or more popular than me, and I was kind of right in the middle, and I bullied the kids that were either smaller than me or less popular or whatever. That's just part of growing up, right? Everyone seems to be so afraid of that, but it's really just part of growing up.
I wouldn't even call it bullying. I mean, obviously you don't want to get to a point where a kid, is going to do harm to themselves or whatever, but, especially in Australia, like first of all, we make fun of everybody else, but we make fun of ourselves just as much. And I think in high school, you got to be able to take a joke as well as give a joke. And I think in high school, we figured that out pretty quickly. But it was, we didn't really have any huge cases of all this stuff that's in the media lately with kids and depression and all that kind of stuff. And you just kind of got on with it. But obviously you don't condone, one kid getting picked on by the whole school. That's always a tough situation. But, sometimes I'd go at one kid and he'd come back at me, and that was kind of everyday life. You'd have bruised elbows and cuts everywhere from scuffling in the schoolyard, and that was the norm. I'm not condoning violence by any means, but as a part of growing up as a kid, that's just something that was everyday nature to us in Australia anyway.
Yeah. Do you think sports is kind of the great equalizer on all this stuff, where all the social justice warriors want to, separate us by religion and color and ethnicity and background and all of that stuff and financial background, all that. That sports, it's like if you perform, I think generally speaking, sports and athletes, that's basically as tolerant and as accepting as it is. They just want you to win and play well.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, winning is the most important thing when it comes to sport. You don't perform well, you're either getting traded or cut or moved on. And if you're performing well, everyone wants you. So there's that 5 minutes that you have to realize when you're in it to try to extend it to 10 minutes. And then there's times where your 5 minutes get shortened because you're out of the league. So it works on both ends. The owners obviously and the GMs want you to perform to your best of your ability, but there's times where you might have an injury or some things going on off the court with family and kids and wives and all that kind of stuff. So it's a tough balance, but sport's probably the one thing where, it is what it is. It's still somewhat pure in its own sense, although it is starting to become very political. But that's why I always like sport, because you could get in trouble at school, you could get in trouble with your parents, but on the weekend you go and play basketball, you kind of forgot about all that.
Yeah, so as it's getting more political, as someone that's outspoken, and now we'll jump into some of that kind of stuff, are you ever encouraged by coaches, managers, agents, any of that kind of stuff, just to shut up about personal opinions and not talk to media and that kind of thing?
Oh, no doubt, and it's always been from day one. I think there's been some really prominent athletes in the history of at least the NBA that have never aligned themselves to one side or the other, because the way they saw it is that both sides support them and both sides buy their shoes, so they didn't want to alienate a certain side. But I'm not a guy that's on the side, to be quite honest. I have my principles on things and how I think, but I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm not middle, I'm common sense. So each and every party has good ideals and good things that they can bring for their people, and every party has some crazy made up stuff that you'd never wish for your dog. So I mean, it's one of those things, I don't align myself to anybody, and I just don't put faith in politicians to change my life.
Yeah, I like that. I'm not left, I'm right, I'm common sense. We don't have much common sense these days. When you're looking at our political system these days, not a lot of common sense in there, huh?
Well, ours isn't much better in Australia, to be quite honest with you. But
that's what I've heard.
Looking at this presidential campaign, I mean, it's laughable. It's the debate. It's the first debate that I've actually sat down and watched. To be honest with you, I wasn't really into it the last two. Didn't really follow a lot of this stuff. I guess social media has made it easier to follow, but it was almost like two high school kids just throwing stuff at each other. And you got no answers from either side. I don't think one person has established themselves as someone that should be the president of one of the most powerful countries in the world, and all you can really say is you feel sorry for the voters and the people, because I'm not sure if there's a good side to vote for.
Yeah, at least you're at least a dual citizen, or are you a 3-time citizen? You were born in Croatia, right?
No, I was born in Australia, but my whole family's Croatian, so I was brought up, speaking Croatian and with kind of Croatian ideals and culture and the food and the music. That was kind of every day for me in Australia, and then obviously very proud to be Australian first and foremost. But no, I don't have the American citizenship, so I'm kind of an innocent bystander in this whole election. I get to not have a horse in the race, so I can kind of laugh at both sides.
Right. I was about to give you 3 citizenships. You only have 1, so.
I have two.
Oh, you do have 2. What's the second one then?
Australian and Croatian, yeah.
Oh, so you do have Croatian, even though you weren't born there. You actually have Croatian. So
because bloodline goes as far back to day dot is Croatian.
Gotcha. So actually, when I was doing a little research on you and I saw the Croatia thing, I saw that you were a big fan of Drazen Petrovic, who was one of my basketball heroes when I was a kid. And originally, I was a Trailblazers fan, and Clyde Drexler was my hero, and Drazen was his backup, but he obviously got success in Jersey. And what I wanted to talk to you about, and this is related to all the social justice warrior stuff and just nations and our prejudices and all that. There's that great ESPN 30 for 30, I don't know if you saw it, about Drazen and Vlade Divac and Croatia and Yugoslavia and all that. So as somebody that's played in international games, forgetting how hostile it can be when you go to Oklahoma City when you're playing for the Warriors or whatever, when you're playing for the Mavs. But what about the international element of sports and what you guys face when a situation like that, where Drazen and Vlade were friends at one time, and then because of outside circumstances, it just all hell breaks loose?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Look, Australia is a relatively young country, so I haven't experienced that playing for Australia. We haven't been to war with anybody, at least in the past 20, 30 years. Whereas the Croatia-Serbia one is a very interesting one when it split up. And, I recommend anyone to watch that documentary if they have a chance on the 30 for 30.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
I actually played with Tony Kukoc for a year, who was on that team. And, he had some crazy stories. He had friends that said, hey, if you talk to Vlade and you're friends with him publicly, you're not friends with us when you come home to Croatia. So
wow.
It's tough. It's tough. And I mean, I was young when the war happened, and I remember it. I had family members involved with it, cousins and aunts and stuff like that over there. And it's tough, but we move on. I mean, it's in the past, and I actually have friends that are Serbian. I mean, I have Croatian friends that don't like that, and I judge a person upon who they are as a person, not by their religion, race, or creed. And I think that's what we're missing in today's society. I think everything is judged upon human nature is to judge someone, but when you judge someone without getting to know them, I think we get into the problems that we have today.
I love it, man. You're speaking the truth. So when did you realize this issue with social justice warriors? I think when I first reached out to you, your bio on Twitter, it said like social justice nightmare or something, or something funny. What was it?
Something like I cringe at social justice warriors privilege or something like that.
Yeah, and I remember seeing that on your thing, and I thought, wow, I mean, this is not what athletes are usually willing to throw out there, but he did it.
Well, look, like I said, I don't take sides. I'm just common sense, and I've tweeted some things before, and I've had the social justice warriors blow up my feed over common sense stuff, and I mean, I don't really care. Like, I mean, these whole issues of today that are just non-issues. I mean, to me, the cultural appropriation stuff. I mean, I just scratch my head laughing at that, because the thing I want as an Australian when I'm in America is people to experience the Australian culture. I'm proud of that,
yeah,
the Croatian culture, and I'd love for you to try, Australian food, Croatian food, whatever it may be. Whereas people today are taking that as offensive or racist or appropriating a culture. That's the whole point of a culture. A point of a culture is to meet other cultures and experience different things. And now you're getting punished for doing that. It's absolutely head scratching to me. And that's, I just draw the line on it. I call them out on social media, and then I get absolutely smashed with the mentions, but I really don't care.
Yeah. So you're saying if you have a margarita, it doesn't automatically mean that you're anti-immigrant? Is that what you're telling me? I just want to be clear.
Anything. I mean, but where does it end? Where does this end?
Yeah, I don't know where it ends. It seems like it never ends. But do you ever, so you put this stuff out there and then you get the onslaught of, all the haters and the trolls and all that stuff, and that's fine. You're using your free speech, they're using theirs. Do you ever think, I shouldn't even bother throwing my thoughts out there because what's the point?
A little bit, maybe second guess putting a tweet out there or saying, "Oh, should I have done that?" But look, I'm a man of principle, and I'd rather you tell me how you feel about me, and I tell you how I feel about you, and we get on with our day. And that's the whole thing with debates and all that kind of stuff. I think if everyone has an opinion, it's not necessarily right or wrong, but I'd rather have an opinion and know your thoughts. I don't want the political crap, and then we don't know where we stand an hour later. And that's how I think it should be, and that's where we've gotten lost.
Yeah.
The debate is a prime example. It's everything they say is they're trying to be so politically correct and not offend people for the most part, that at the end of the day, what answers did you get out of that 2-hour debate? I got none. I mean, they didn't answer one question, either side. It was just running around in circles.
It's incredible because it's like, oh, you got this one lying this way, you got this one lying this way. Then the fact checkers come in, and I don't even believe the fact checkers anymore. So we're in this like weird thing where it almost feels like we're post-truth. You just have to kind of figure out whatever the hell you think. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, it is. And look, I just read today that Twitter stocks dropped 20% in one day, and you wonder why. I mean, there's more and more people that are putting their thoughts on Twitter that don't align with Twitter's political agenda, and they're getting banned and suspended. And that's what really irks me. I mean, I don't agree with some of the people that have been suspended and banned with what they've said, but it is their right to have free speech. I mean, you can't push one side or the other. And I think, obviously the mainstream media is predominantly left, which is a little frustrating, but I wouldn't want it right, conservative or whatever. I've actually tried to Google and try to find news sites that aren't partisan to one side. Try to do that.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck with that.
You end up in a matrix. You can't. It's impossible.
I
just want news. I want to know exactly what happened. I don't want to know. I don't want the bullcrap interviews or the backlighting or making something seem worse than it is or not as bad as it is. I just want the truth, and you can't find it. Name me one website where you can find that.
Yeah, I don't know. People ask me. That's one of the things people ask me all the time is, where do you get your news? How do you stay informed? I find I have to read just to figure out what happened in one thing. I usually have to read about 4 or 5 different stories and kind of piece it all together, because it's like everybody's kind of giving you their own brand of bullshit.
Yeah, and you got to guess. There's 4 or 5 stories you read. You got to kind of put it together like an Einstein type formula and take a punt on what you think really happened. That's embarrassing, and that's kind of the reality of the world we live in. I read almost every other day. Mainstream media's viewers are falling off the cliff, and eventually it's going to be a minor number of people watching that.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you guys in the locker room, how much do you guys talk about this kind of stuff? I would imagine this upcoming season there's going to be a lot of talk, obviously, about Black Lives Matter, and I'm guessing that there's probably going to be some players that aren't going to stand for the anthem. That would just be my suspicion. Do you guys get into that kind of stuff in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, one teammate who was with me in Golden State and he's with me here in Dallas, Harrison Barnes, he's very involved with political stuff and reads a lot, much like myself. So we often disagree on things, but it's a prime example. We'll debate and have a fun little debate about it, but it's not taken personally. He has his side on things and I have my side on things. But at the end of the day, it's an opinion and whatnot. But I've obviously been, I'm in a predominantly African American league, so I have seen some things that are pretty bad that a lot of guys on my team have had to endure growing up, and heard some shocking stories. So I've kind of been on both sides of it. In Australia, I didn't really, even know the history of what had happened, and a lot of these guys growing up with some, somewhat profiling with police and all that kind of stuff. So it's tough from both sides, because some guys on my team that they're great guys, and they've explained some of the pain they've had to deal with, and it's not great.
Yeah. Have you ever had, I get it, Harrison's a good guy and he can have those conversations with you and you guys can put it aside. Have you had teammates that you've really gotten into it with where it's just like, we can't go there anymore?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And then I just don't engage those guys. It's a losing battle. But like I said, everyone's entitled to their opinion. But once you realize that someone can't accept your side of things or your argument without name calling and all that kind of stuff, you kind of just move along and don't have debates.
Yeah. we need some more centrists, right? I mean, everything you're basically throwing at me here, I'm actually not even fully sure of your real political beliefs yet. I could ask you some if you want, but like, you strike me as just sort of a common sense centrist. That's really the one thing that we don't have anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm stuck. I don't have a party that I would vote for happily, you know, and I'm not sided to anybody. Like, I think all politicians are full of shit. You know, they'll aim their campaigns to get votes, if you know, and they don't believe half the stuff that they're saying. And I've just grown up in Australia. It's very similar. Selling broken promises, car salesman, lawyer type attitude. And I just don't put my faith in politicians. I mean, people that do, good luck to them. But I've mentioned this before. I mean, you know, Joe Blow gets voted in tomorrow. Guess what? You're still going to have to get up, go to work, pick your kids up from school, cook dinner for the kids, you know, make sure your wife's happy or your husband's happy. And it's not going to really change a whole lot. You still got to go out there and kind of, you know, sustain for yourself. So that's kind of my attitude on it.
In a weird way, is that sort of just how Western society is designed to work? Like, it can sort of get to like a decent level of goodness. Doesn't mean we don't have things wrong with our society, but it gets to a place, then it just sort of by default has to become corrupt. And then it just kind of it'll either just stay there or eventually crumble. Like, there is no way out of this kind of morass that we're in.
Yeah, I don't even have an answer to it. I mean, I don't have an answer to it. It's, you know,
I'm just asking you to solve all of society's problems. You know.
Yeah, I'm a dumb athlete. I need to shut up. Probably in my mentions within an hour of this video going up. So I'm definitely prepared for that. But it's just one of those things. There's no answer to it. It's a tough one. Like I said, every day, my whole motto is go and try my best in what I'm doing, work hard for the family and all that, and get on with life. I mean, the petty stuff that, you know, what gets me as well with the social justice warriors and whatnot, the stuff that I hear from fans in a road game, and I wouldn't change it, would, you know, they'd have to build a safe space on the side of the bench for all the triggering, you know, quote unquote.
Right.
That's a part of sport. Grow up. You know what I mean? Like, someone says something bad or something you don't agree with or offends you. Okay, great. You offended me. I can say something back. I'm moving on with my day, rather than trying to get that person fired from their job or whatever. That's just ridiculous.